we now have 3 dogs, where we used to have 1, and we now have officially we have 4 cats, but we have 2 fosters, so I've got 6 cats as well at the moment. Well, many people can relate to this, that the more you fight, the worse it is. So better just to nod graciously. I think we have now, or by the end of this year, we'll have something like 1,500 vehicles that are electric, the largest electric fleet in Malaysia by miles. I really enjoy seeing their faces light up when they take over a new role. So that's really cool. But our customers love it too.
Hello, listeners. Today we have Charles Brewer here again with us. Previously, I had him as well. Of course, we are at Pos Malaysia, one of the oldest companies here in Malaysia. Charles, welcome again.
Thank you very much. I was saying before we came on air that I'm either that good looking or that interesting that you wanted to come and talk to me twice, which is it's not. Most people meet me once and don't want to meet me again, so it's quite a privilege for you to come back.
I think it's a privilege, like for us, letting us use the lounge here outside your office, such a historic place as well. And I think it's great. And thank you for having me as well at your Beyond Boardroom event last week.
Yeah, it was good.
And you're doing a lot of things, so it's a lot of things we can talk about as well.
Sure.
So I think first thing that I want to talk about, we start from the personal side. Maybe my first question is, how many cats and dogs do you have?
So that's an interesting one. So we originally had 1 dog. And I mean, I love pets, so just want to get it out there. I'm okay with pets, but I think my wife gets a little bit bored with life. You know, I don't have time to be bored. I'm far too busy with Pos Malaysia and everything else besides. But I think my wife must get a little bit bored because she's taken over the last year and a half, 2 years. She's taken up fostering, which means if somebody finds a cat or a dog on the street and they trying to find them a home, there's an in-between stage where you sort of foster, or I'm not sure what they call them now, what the official name is, but the in-between piece where you look after them until they get rehomed. She's done that. The problem is that she's a foster fail. So every time we have a cat or a dog that's supposed to go somewhere else, it ends up staying in my house. So today we now have, as of today, and I say this, by the time I get home, it could have changed, but we now have 3 dogs, where we used to have 1, and we now have, officially, we have 4 cats, but we have 2 fosters, so I've got 6 cats as well at the moment.
And you've been traveling around. I've seen you visiting different Pos Malaysia offices around the country. What's your favorite city?
If you asked me to really pick one, I probably would pick Georgetown. I am particularly fond of the vibe and the character and the history of Penang. And of course, Penang is where the very first letter was ever sent from. So I have a bit of a bias towards it anyway.
Oh, the first letter was sent there? Where was the first post office?
It was the very first post office, actually. It was not in Penang, it was somewhere else. But the first letter that was sent out of Penang. And it was sent by an admiral, a British Navy admiral. Oh. And it was sent back to the UK, to the Queen of the time.
Was it a few hundred years ago?
It was 200 plus years ago, yeah.
Oh,
so
before Pos Malaysia?
Yeah, just before, when Pos Malaysia started, obviously.
Oh.
And that was the very first letter that was sent, out of Penang. It was fantastic. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have a bit of a bias for Penang as well.
Yeah. And speaking about history, how does it feel leading a company that's 200 plus years old?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I tell both our employees and many other people besides that. I mean, it's the transformation of Pos Malaysia is hard yards, hard work, and it makes me feel very tired. And today I'm a bit tired actually, but it does make you feel it can be quite stressful. But at the same time, I'm really, really proud, and I know many of our organisation are very proud to work for such an iconic company, a heritage brand that's been around for so long. So typically everything in life has flip sides, both the positives and the negatives. And Pos Malaysia's flip side is it has this beautiful, rich history. You never have, when you get in a taxi or you go to a restaurant or to a hotel or whatever it may be, and they say, what do you do? And you say you work for Pos Malaysia. No one ever says, sorry, who's that? Everybody knows who Pos Malaysia is. I don't have to explain who I work for. That makes life a bit easier. So, but no, it's fantastic. I love it. I love doing what I do. Yeah.
Hey everyone, producer Elton here. We share stories from business leaders in Asia, and if this video brought you any value, hit the subscribe button down below, like and share with your friends. Thank you.
And like we were just talking about Arsenal before we started, so how do you make your team feel the history or feel they're part of this, 200 years history?
I think they make me remember that it's probably more them to me than me to them, to be honest with you. But I'll give you a lovely story, actually, just to sort of amplify that. When we were, we have many different work streams that we're working through in terms of our transformation and turnaround of the organization, and building, hopefully, what will be a successful business for the next 200 years. But as part of that transformation, one work stream is obviously making sure we have the culture right, making sure we create the right culture to be successful for tomorrow. So when we were introducing and testing the first part of that cultural transformation, the very first program, we did, as we do with every part of it, we test it to see if the music lands correctly, the words land correctly, the story lands correctly. We want to make sure we refine it before we deploy it and have 18,000 people go through it. And so we were running some tests on the very first program. And I remember, this is 3 years ago now, and I remember that we had about 10 people in a room looking at it, and one of the employees that was there was a postman. And in the first program we ran, which was called Foundation, so it was the foundation of our transformation, we talked a lot, and I talked a lot about transformation. I used the word transformation quite a lot. And this postman stood up quite elaborately and quite emotionally, and he tapped his brand and the Pos Malaysia. He said, what do I need to transform? And he said, I love Pos Malaysia. I love what I do. I love the history of Pos Malaysia. My family love Pos Malaysia. My customers love that I deliver mail every single day. What do I need to do differently? And it was really interesting. And I said, I'm a very curious and keen learner. And I learned that using the word transformation is probably not appropriate. First and foremost, because I think all organizations are in or will be in a constant state of transformation. With the way the world moves now and how it changes, whether it's digital, whether it's consumer, whether it's your employee, the demands from those different quarters are so different every single day that I think all organizations are going to be kind of in a constant state of transformation and change. So therefore, to talk about transformational change is probably no longer relevant because we're always changing. Yeah, that's point number one. Point number two is that not necessarily everybody needs to transform. So when we talked about where Pos Malaysia was, and clearly, if we look back 3 years ago where we were as an organization, we weren't in a very healthy place, and we still got things to do, by the way, but we were in a significantly worse place then than we are now. And so for us to make significant change, painting the whole organization as needing to change is incorrect. The postmen and couriers were doing what they should do every single day, delivering letters and delivering parcels. It wasn't their problem or their fault that we'd got ourselves into the situation we got into. So to your point, I don't really need to constantly remind them of Pos Malaysia. I think they're very proud of what they do and proud of who Pos Malaysia is, what they need. And like all families, they need guardrails, they need direction, they need vision, they need execution, they need energizing sometimes, they need empathy, they need support, they need humor. There's many other ways and many different things that we can provide as a leader. And I was at a conference just this week, and the parallel that I think is a really great parallel for leaders to sort of get their heads around is that it's a little bit like the sort of dragon boat racing, that you have that little guy at the back or the little girl at the back who's doing the drum, which signifies how fast you should row the canoe. And sometimes you need to go faster and sometimes you need to go slower. And it's the same thing for Pos Malaysia. As leaders, we need to recognize when we need to energize and move the business forward at pace and when we need to slow down and regather our thoughts. So to your question, yeah, I don't spend too much time telling them how amazing Pos Malaysia is. They spend a lot of time telling me how amazing Pos Malaysia is, and they're right. It's an amazing company.
Yeah, and you've been here for 4 years now. And how is it transforming, or like you said, transformation of a 200-year-old plus year old company?
Yeah, so just over 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years.
3 years. And like I said, and all joking aside, it is tough. It's hard yards. I mean, a few comments. So Pos Malaysia is not the only postal operator that is transforming. In fact, every postal operator is having to transform because our traditional business of mail and letters is declining and parcels are growing, and it's a very competitive space, and you need to digitalize. I mean, the whole, as I said earlier, the whole sort of environment we operate in is changing around us very, very fast. So, we're not unique in terms of having to transform and change who we are, which is good because we can leverage other experiences. A lot of what we did when we built our strategy was looking at, there are 190 plus postal operators around the world. So we looked at, what was some good examples of the best transformations, what were some that weren't working, what were the red threads, and that helped us to create our North Star in terms of who we want to become and how we want to get there. So that's point number one. Point number two is, it is tiring, and again, I'd be lying if I didn't say it isn't. I think it's tiring for all of us. If it's, I've gone through various transformations of various organizations. Some have been easier than others, and some are harder. Pos Malaysia's transformation is pretty big. It's not small. Our work streams and transformation streams pretty much touch every element of the business. So yeah, it can be quite tiring, and it can be quite challenging for everybody. And like I said earlier, I recognize and I can tell by sort of body language, commentary, eyes, hand gestures, talk on chat, where the organization is and how they're feeling. And I can tell when they're feeling a bit tired. And like I said, therefore that's my job, to re-energize and energize the organization at appropriate times. So yeah, it has been quite tiring. But then lastly, it's also been very rewarding. We've made some incredible progress on some of the key elements of our transformation. Progress that, and having worked in this industry and sector for 30, must come into 40 years now, I have rarely seen some of the output that this team has created. So we should, go back to your point, we should be very proud, and we do celebrate, and we are proud of a lot of things that we have done to make Pos Malaysia significantly better than what it was, say, 3 years ago. So still lots to do. So we're very humble, still lots to do, but also I'm proud of some of the milestones we've achieved over the last 3 years. It's been quite amazing.
Can you share some of these milestones?
Oh, lots. I mean, so we have a strategy house built around 3 strategic pillars. So 3 key strategic pillars, which is having, pillar number 1 is having highly motivated, highly engaged and safe employees. That's pillar number 1. And to your question, if we look at some of the milestones that we've achieved there, so our employee engagement score in Pos Malaysia today is around 76 positive, 76% positive. 90% is best in class. If you get to 90, you are kicking the doors down in terms of happy employees. So we're not quite at 90 yet. But we are significantly better. We started the journey in the mid-50s, so we've really progressed how well engaged our employees are. Still much to do, but made massive progress. If we look at our, as another example, our diversity. So diversity is really important to me. Having people with different opinions and different thoughts to my own is really important. And as one example of our progress on diversity, now around 42% of our leadership is female. And that's moved about 8 or 9 points in the last 3 years from where it was. So really moving that up quite quickly. Again, I want to get it above 50% very quickly. So we're heading towards that. And I'm pretty sure we'll be close to that by the end of this year. And if you look at safety, so the third element of pillar number 1, our safety results have improved consistently 3 years in a row by around 15 to 20% every year. So we've reduced the number of accidents by 15 to 20%. And given that we got 10,000 drivers on the road on 2-wheel and 4-wheel vehicles, the number of accidents we have when we look at Miros data is really quite small. 1 is too many, but it's really quite small, and we keep reducing it, and still much to do there, but it's reduced, as I say, by about 20% 3 years in a row, which is really something to be very proud of. So that's pillar number 1. Pillar number 2 is all about delivering great service and delighting our customers. So our second pillar is, if you've got happy people, they should deliver a great service and keep our customers happy. And when I first came in, we were doing about 48% on time delivery for parcels, and around 50 something, low 50% for mail, which is not very good. In fact, it's very bad. And now 3 years on, we're around 92% for parcel on time and around 97% on time for mail, which is best in the industry. It's fantastic. And again, like I said earlier, that movement from where we were around sort of mid 40s, low 50s on time performance, so 1 in 2 getting delivered on time, is not very good. Where we are now is best in class. That movement I've never seen in the period that we did, the speed that we did it, I've never seen in any operation I've worked in before. So that's something that I'm very proud of my operations team, that they understood the issue and quickly course corrected it. So that's on one example of service. Another one would be we have 630 plus retail points. We have about 1.5, 1.7 million unique visitors come in every month into our retail points, and we measure their satisfaction. So we have those things you scan, are you happy, unhappy? It's called NPS, Net Promoter Score. When we first started, it was about 46% positive, and now it's 91, 92% positive. So we've really improved the customer satisfaction in our retail points and in customer service and on our website and in delivery, all the places we measure NPS. We've improved immensely. If you've got happy customers, that tends to lead to a better fiscal position. So whilst, my last comment, whilst we've not got ourselves to be in a sustainable fiscal position, we've reduced the losses every single year and continue to do so. And so there's that continuous improvement. Still work to be done, but all of those 3 elements are leading to a better financial performance for Post Malaysia. So again, and many other things besides sustainability, we could spend time on brand, we could spend time on culture, we could spend time. We've made a lot of progress across pretty much all the work streams here.
Was it during your time as well that post offices open on weekends?
Yeah. So we spent when we were sort of considering what the strategy for Post Malaysia should be, we looked at, like I mentioned, what other postal operators are doing, and so what they're doing well, what they're not doing so well. We spoke to our stakeholders, whether that be the board, the government, the regulator, the unions, our employees. We spoke and listened to what their views were of the business. But to your point, we also spent a lot of time talking to and listening to our customers. And then we built the strategy off the back of that. And what, to your point, one of the things, not the only thing, but one of the things our customers mentioned was that our hours of operation for our retail points weren't very helpful. I think in those days and this is again only 2.5 years ago, but I think in those days we were operating for the most part 8 until 4 o'clock. And if you want to go to a post office, probably after you finish work. So that wasn't very good. So we extended the hours of our postal operators into the evening, and we also opened up at weekends, which gives our customers greater flexibility.
That's life changing.
Yeah,
for me.
and I think again, I said there's many other things I could tell you about, but and without sort of self-perpetuating my own happiness, I take a lot of satisfaction from what customers tell me. And there isn't a week that goes by where I don't meet somebody who says they've really seen a change in Post Malaysia. They've seen a change in our service capability. They've seen a change in our retail. They've seen a change. I even had somebody just sent me one just now as I was coming in here. He took a selfie with one of my couriers who had delivered an important package he was waiting for. But his point wasn't, you delivered it. I mean, that's kind of chips to get in the game that we deliver the package. His point was, and he's somebody I know through a university that I work at as an adjunct professor. But his point was that the postman was so happy. He said he's an example of what I just talked to you about, the cultural change, the happy. Not all employees, but majority of employees are happy, that he's smiling, that he knows what's going on in Post Malaysia, he knows who I am. So we just have a happier workforce, and if you've got happier employees, they're going to give a better service. That for me is a bigger a measure of success than anything I tell you. The fact that he told me that is more important than me telling you that I think we're doing a great job. So the more feedback we get from customers telling us it's going in the right direction, that's a really good indicator. But equally, I listen and engage a lot with customers who are not so happy. We still have things we always have things we can be better at.
I'm a user of Post Malaysia. Anything I need to send, I'm from Taiping, so anything I need to send back to typing, whether it's a document or something to my mom. I'll just
No, I
use Pos
appreciate it.
Laju. Yeah.
I hasten to add, going back to the point about sort of when you tell people who you work for, you never have to explain who it is. Sometimes I don't tell people because somebody somewhere will say, 10 years ago, I sent a letter from here to Taiping and it didn't get delivered on time. What happened? You know? And I was in a meeting the other day with one of our stakeholders, and they were asking about where our mail service level was, our delivery service. And I was telling them that in August, our on-time performance for mail, so we do about 1 million letters a day, so 1 million letters a day. So our on-time performance for 1 million letters was 97%. Yeah. Now that still means we got 3% wrong, but 97% on time. And they said, you see, I had somebody the other day that sent a letter to Penang and it took 5 days. And I went, we get 3% wrong. So that means some won't get delivered on time. For all sorts of reasons, there's always room for us to be better. But it is better, significantly better than it was. Still room for improvement further.
Yes, I can feel that as well in the brand, in the people that work there, and the experience at your retail offices. I go there to do my license renewal and a lot of things.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Please.
Yeah. And I think to get a sense of what type of leader you are, you said a lot of happy employees translates to happy experiences. You told me a story when the last time I came here about digital transformation, about the usage of paper in the office. Can you share that again?
I can, yeah, but I probably get darts thrown at me when I tell the story. But and again, I was coincidentally talking about this just yesterday, that if you have to be honest sometimes, and the honest my honest view of transformation is change, yeah. And it doesn't matter whether you're transforming or changing sustainability, or you're transforming and changing culture or leadership or learning new sales skills. Anything that is a change creates pretty much the same effect, which is it takes time. It takes tenacity. You have to be very committed to it. It takes passion and enthusiasm. It takes commitment. But you also have to recognize, no matter what you do and how happy you are and how energized you are and whatever else, some people don't like it. And some people are going to resist it. And some people will take a longer time to go through what they call the change curve, the well of despair. So some people take a long time to go through. Anyway, to your point. So when we... amongst, as I said earlier, many work streams on our sort of roadmap of transformation, one of the work streams we have is around sustainability. So I mentioned the 3 core pillars, but we have many other work streams too. And one of them is that we want to be a more sustainable business than we have been in the past. We have a lot of vehicles on the road. We produce a lot of paper and cardboard. We have a lot of plastic. So we have an implication to the planet which is not particularly healthy, and that's a sector in the industry has that implication, whether it be vehicles, whether it be energy, lighting, packaging, paper, whatever else. But anyway, to the point. So we worked with a very large consulting company to help develop our sustainability roadmap, which we launched to the market and to the public in March, April last year. And we have a commitment to be net zero by 2050. So the first domestic logistics operator to make that commitment. And it has many pieces, so electrifying our fleet. So we're converting all of our vehicles. We're putting solar panels on buildings and blah, 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 blah. We're getting rid of color on the packaging. We have recycled boxes. This 80% of this comes from 80% recycled material. We now repurpose our uniforms and packaging. So we're just doing anything and everything we can to take us to the net zero target that we set ourselves. We want to do things that are fairly simple and we can control. You can't control everything and you can't tackle everything. So we tackle the things that make sense for us and make sense within our fiscal environment. But we're doing a lot and working really fast. To your question, one of the things we looked at was things like paper. Yeah, we use a lot of paper. And again, to your question and where you started, we're a 200-year-old company, which a 200-year-old company, they come with both good and bad. And one of the bads is that we have a lot of processes and bureaucracy and old systems and old processes. And it meant that we were printing something, I think it was the equivalent of 7,000 reams of paper or 7,000 pieces of paper every month or something we're going through, just through normal course of business. Yeah. So I was sitting in my office and amongst many other things, thinking about, well, how do we change that? And there are a number of different ways you can create change. You can motivate the audience to change. So I could spend a lot of time, going around explaining that printing paper is not a very good thing to do, and it's bad for the planet. You don't need to. Please stop it. Or you can cut the source. Cut the source of printing. So many years ago, when I was I was on a field trip to the west coast of America, and I met one of the founders of Facebook, and he was telling me this story that Mark Zuckerberg was trying to get his programmers and coders to code so that it was mobile friendly. Because if you remember, I don't remember, the sort of early iterations of Facebook were really clunky, not very good CX, and so on and so forth. And he wanted it to be, really mobile friendly. You can just do it on your phone. And so he was trying very hard to get people to get his coders to do this. And they were working on PCs. So one weekend he came in and removed all the PCs. So when the coders came in on Monday morning, they had no choice but to code and do their changes on mobile phone, which forced them. Yeah. So I was sitting in my office one day thinking about this paper challenge, that we print all this paper, it all goes in bin, everything is kept for years and years and years for no good reason, takes up space. And I'd asked our building guys, how many printers do we have in a building? And I think in this building we had something like 36 printers. And I said, well, that's ridiculous. So I took my printer and gave it to my assistant and said, get rid of it, give it back to the company that we rent it from or lease it from. I don't need it. I'm not going to print anymore. And then I did the same thing with pretty much every printer on every floor and removed it without anybody knowing, and a few people knowing, and sort of getting rid of them. So when people came in on the Monday morning, they had no choice. They went to print and nothing printed because there was no printer. Now, it's a little bit like going to the dentist, so it was forced pain, but very quick and sharp and done. So now, that was about a year and a half ago. Now no one talks about printing because it was done a year and a half ago. But I can assure you at the time there was quite a bit of noise and angst and frustration to, where's my printer gone? So we do have, I hasten to add, I did allow one or two to creep back into the building, but now you have to put codes in.
Yeah, I saw one on the way to the toilet.
Yeah, so there's a few here and there, but nowhere near as many. And I think we end by doing that, and I say it's like sort of ripping the Band-Aid off. It's a bit of pain at first, but then you get through it very quickly. But anyway, the net result of that was that not just that, I mean, we do many other things besides, but I think we've reduced our printing by north of 50% in a very short period of time. So for me, it's a funny story, but it's also a good example that transformation and change can take 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 hour. It's all the same. Just rip the plaster off and get it done. Sometimes in life, it makes it much more efficient, significantly less painful, and then you get over the hurdle much faster. And it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, it's sometimes you need to make the change happen, right?
Yeah.
And you mentioned as well, this industry is a challenging industry. You're making a lot of progress, reducing losses and things like that. But what do you see as the future of this industry?
For postal industry or logistics in general?
Yeah, logistics in general.
Yeah, I think I think it is sustainability. And if you look at sustainability as a subject around the world, there are clearly other markets where sustainability is much further around the curve and much more therefore relevant and mandated. I mean, there are some countries now where they've already instructed logistics operators you can't enter a city unless you're green. So Montreal, for example, New York has a pretty big mandate on this now. Germany has a number of cities where they're doing, France. So I think, to answer your question, I think sustainability is going to become much more relevant over the next 3, 5, 10 years. To the, beyond the boardroom, I mentioned it there that I believe customers and companies more and more are going to demand and insist that their logistics operators are more sustainable than they currently are. We can't just carry on doing what we're doing. If you look at what's happening around the world with floods and so on and so forth, highest temperatures, flooding. There's flooding in Europe. I mean, some markets have never ever seen flooding. So I just personally believe passionately believe that we as humans should do something different. So I do believe sustainability it already is, but I think will become an increasingly bigger play for the sector. I think digitalization and automation, if you look at sort of chat GPT, AI, robotics, RPA, autonomous vehicles, all of those will grow considerably. So already I was talking just the other day to a very large logistics operator in China who is deploying autonomous delivery modules en masse across China, where you no longer have driver and van and driver and bike. They're done by autonomous vehicles. Things like that are going to really grow very rapidly. Robotics, is already growing very rapidly. So the sort of human intervention will become less and less. AI, I mean, we're really embryonic from a Pos Malaysia perspective, but the upside positive side of AI, the upsides positivity around AI, I think is somewhat unknown for most people, but will become an increasingly big play. So sort of digitalization of our industry is going to change quite significantly. Clearly, mail will still continue to decline over the next few years. It's not going to grow at the rate it has done in the last few years. Not going to grow at all, I would say. Just going to carry on declining. But conversely, parcel, online, my children are teenagers, and their passion for on demand is almost sees no boundaries. Everything has to be now. So I think it'll get faster. It'll be, I want it now, not tomorrow. Even next day delivery will become, I was telling somebody this story the other day. My wife's first online order was when my daughter was about 3. So that would be 14 years ago now. That was her first online order, and it was when we were living in New York. And she ordered from a company called J. Crew, and she ordered a dress for my daughter. And I can remember as if it was yesterday, she turned to me and she said, "I just made my first online order." And this is an apartment in New York when we were living there. And I said, "Oh, that's cool." I said, "Really cool." I said, "When will it be delivered?" She said, "Oh, it'll be delivered in about 12 days. And this is in New York to New York, And I looked at her, I went, "Okay, that's amazing, 12 days. Now, today we talk about next day delivery, 97% next day delivery. And even that doesn't satisfy this insatiable desire for must have it right now. I still don't fully get why people need to have a cucumber delivered in 1 hour. But they do. And it's called demand creation. So things like Grab, where, we didn't know that we needed to know where our car is, but now we do. And if you can't see the car, you wouldn't use the app. You wouldn't use a taxi. If you can't see the car, you wouldn't use it, because that 2.5 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, we believe, is hugely valuable to us. So that's called demand creation. And the same thing is kind of happening in the e-commerce space, where, companies are creating this demand of I must have. So I think speed will continue to grow at a rapid rate. And I think for Pos Malaysia, and so I think logistics sector, that's probably enough for today in terms of where I think it's going to go. But for Pos Malaysia, all of those that I just mentioned, plus we need to keep looking and identifying value creators that will create a positive and sustainable story for Pos Malaysia for the next 200 years. Things like Post Shop and other things that we're currently working on that we believe will also be good value creators for Pos Malaysia in the next sort of 50 years or so.
What's the exciting projects that you're looking at the moment?
Many. All the things I just mentioned are in play. So we're, like most companies, rapidly increasing our knowledge around AI and ChatGPT and how we can leverage that. I was just with somebody before I came into this meeting talking about how we're going to start leveraging that in our finance function and our marketing function and other areas. So they're helping us with that space. I think, again, hugely embryonic. We're just touching toe in the water on this subject, but the upside potential on that subject is really quite exciting. So I think that's pretty exciting for Pos Malaysia. Digitalization in general, we've done a lot already, but we still have much to do and many opportunities in that space. Autonomous I don't think drones are going to appear anytime, so I get asked that one very often. I don't think for us. I think they have a use case in other areas, but not necessarily for Pos Malaysia. But definitely autonomous vehicles over the next sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 years. I think we'll see those starting to appear. Definitely sustainability, where, as you know, we're working very hard and fast on electrifying our fleet and solar panels on buildings. I think we have now I think we have now, or by the end of this year, we'll have something like 1,500 vehicles that are electric, the largest electric fleet in Malaysia by miles, by a long, long way. Bit of a pun there, by miles. And that's really cool. I'm very proud of that. And we now have 16 buildings with solar panels on. By the end of next year, it'll be 300 plus. So we have a really exciting sustainability journey coming up that we're going through at a rapid speed. That's pretty cool, and that's pretty exciting. Something I think will make a significant difference. But aside for some of the core business, and I touched on post shop. So we have 3 or 4 what we call value creators that we're working through, and respectfully and humbly, we don't know 100% that all 4 will be the right 4 in terms of what we want to place our bet on over the next few years. But early indicators are that all 4 are doing really, really well. The one that probably gets the most attention is post shop, the convenience store. That's really it's fun. Employees love it, which is really I think that's really quite pleasing. So we've sort of moved some people from our retail function to become convenience store owners and runners, and it's lovely seeing them being so excited by it. I really enjoy seeing their faces light up when they take over a new role. So that's really cool. But our customers love it too, and again, still early days, but we're now up to I think we've got 36 post shop stores, convenience stores. They sell everything from ice cream, really good ice cream, by the way. We were looking at some numbers earlier today, and ice cream sales have gone up in a number of stores. And I said to the person who runs post shop, you may want to check whether I was in that area that day, because I think I'm driving a lot of those sales. But the ice cream is fantastic. We sell bread, water, and all sorts of other things. But we did post shop with a view that it would drive up footfall. So like I mentioned, we did about 1.7 million per month. In terms of footfall, and we did post shop but it's declined because of digitalization and so on and so forth. So we did post shop to reverse the footfall decline, and we did post shop as a margin-led business, as in it creates value and fiscal value we merge it in the same location as our post offices to see if it can add financial value. And so far, post shop's ticking both. So we're seeing footfall go up in those places, those locations where we've opened post shop, and we're seeing the financial fortunes or performance of those locations improve quite significantly. So far, that's a tick. Second one is fulfillment. We have for about the last year or so been rolling out fulfillment across Malaysia. So we now have 6 locations with a very, very large one in Shah Alam. I think it's about 400,000 square feet. So we're about 70% utilization of our space for fulfillment, and that has a double positive hit to Pos Malaysia. We get fiscal value from the space that we sell in our warehouses for fulfillment, but we also get the product coming into our delivery network. So if a customer uses us fulfillment, obviously we value that tremendously in terms of the value it creates from the warehousing activity, but we also get the delivery coming into the network. So we get 2 hits, which is really positive, and it makes the customer stickier with us, with Pos Malaysia. So another reason to stay with us in a very competitive space. So far, that's ticking the box. Our third one is what we call Readily Express. So that's our international product on steroids, and so it's the international cross-border business is about 1/3 of the size of domestic globally, but it comes typically a 3x margin. So the margin on cross-border is normally 3 times the margin of domestic. So it's a good space. There are not too many players in that space right now. I mean, there are quite a lot, but not as competitive as, say, domestic. And still early days for us, but so far so good. We're sort of doubling the volume each month virtually, which is really fantastic. But much more out there. So far, we've really concentrated on Malaysia in and Malaysia out. And now we're going to start looking at Australia to US, US to Indonesia, Indonesia to China, China to Europe. So we can really, it's a digital solution. We can plug it in on any trade lane. So that has a significant upside runway that we can tap into. But again, so far so good. And then lastly, we've just started. It's really, really early stage, but we started exploring capitalizing on our digital knowledge and what we've done from a digital journey perspective, and seeing whether other companies in Malaysia and other companies outside of Malaysia want to leverage some of the products we've developed from a digital perspective, which is called Scintilla.
Yeah.
But that's brand new, just started. So I come back and ask me in a year's time, and I'll let you know how that's going. And I hasten to add, and a little bit back to what I said earlier on about all companies are in a state of transformation. Those won't be the last ones. Those are the four we're learning from now, and we're learning every day what works well and what doesn't, and we'll stop ones that don't work. By the way, if they don't work, we won't be founder proud. If they don't work, we'll shut them down, and if they work, we'll accelerate and scale. So far, they're definitely ticking the boxes, but they won't be the last ones. We're looking every week and every month. We're looking at what else makes sense for Pos Malaysia to become. So should be an interesting next few years.
Yeah. And exciting times ahead.
Yeah.
And you started, you said 3 years plus ago, around the same time as when Arteta started at Arsenal.
Yeah.
So you're a big Arsenal fan.
I am a big Arsenal fan.
So I think last question before we wrap up is like, what do you think? It's now the 3rd year. I think of Arsenal's chances this year.
Yeah, very good.
Very good.
Very good. If it's a shame we didn't sneak a result at the Etihad. I mean, to go there and to be leading 2-1 with plus 9 minutes on the clock with 10 men is pretty impressive. So I think, it's a little bit like Pos Malaysia, every day, what I've seen, from Arteta, and I don't know him personally.
What I see is like the defense is stronger, it's more solid.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of parallels, not between me and Arteta. I'm not even in the same, anywhere close to being in the same league, but what he's done with Arsenal, I think there are some parallels. He started on what's the foundation? The foundation was get the defence right, and then he's adding some flair, and I think we still need a striker up front, a better striker. So it's similar to Pos Malaysia. We started our journey 3 years ago with, look, let's get the basics right, get the foundation right. And if you got the foundation right, then you can start moving forward. And for us, the foundation was making sure we deliver what we pick up. And to date, we're doing that really, really well. Now we've got to start creating the flair. We need to find the Erling Haaland for Pos Malaysia, the one that can score the goals every week. Yeah.
All right, Charles, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you.